Is Master Roshi the strongest human in Dragon Ball? Well, the actual answer to that question is he shouldn't be, but when you analyze this a little bit deeper, you probably get to that conclusion. Mike, take it away.
Hey guys, it's Mike here, and in this video, there's definitely an argument to be made that Master Roshi is in fact the strongest human. And in this poll, we could take a look at some of the other examples that were given to compare to them, beginning with Yamcha. Now, with regard to Yamcha, if we compare him in the anime and manga of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, realistically, he should have been more powerful than Master Roshi ever since, like, the 23rd tournament. However, despite the fact that Yamcha only got more and more powerful as the story went along, up until he seemingly stopped fighting and training after the Cell Saga, what ended up happening is that somehow, as we see with their comparisons in the anime and manga, it looks like Master Roshi vastly surpassed him in terms of strength, because even though Yamcha does start to train again in the Moro arc, for example, it still is shown that Master Roshi has him outgunned with techniques and other powers, despite being literally centuries old. And when it comes to the Tournament of Power, there were a number of choices that theoretically could have been made, including with Yamcha, and there was a whole kind of funny gag situation where we kept seeing Yamcha waiting around thinking he was going to be chosen, but instead they picked Master Roshi over him, which goes to show you that Roshi clearly was far more powerful and far more capable than Yamcha, even at that point in the story.
Absolutely, Mike, and when we actually look at the training specifically, we have to remember that Yamcha not only trained with Kami and Mr. Popo on the lookout specifically, because remember, Mike, Master Roshi actually makes a mention before that he had never gotten a chance to train with quote-unquote God in Dragon Ball, so that was a feat he wasn't able to do, because the most he ever did was train with Master Korin or Karin, depending on which translation that you're talking about for all of you nerds that have a stick up your ass for me mispronouncing names. Now after this, when Yamcha dies, he trains with King Kai for an extended period of time, and when you consider the fact that Yamcha got to King Kai's planet a lot faster than Goku got to King Kai's planet, and we also have to remember that Master Roshi, as you said in the 23rd tournament, pretty much said that he had retired and his students had surpassed him, and in addition to this, Yamcha was never able to dodge Jiren. Yamcha was never able to fight against Frost and do many of these amazing things, so we can clearly say that Master Roshi is clearly stronger than Yamcha. But moving on to the next character on this list here, Mike, we have Tien, who actually got 20% of the votes versus Master Roshi that got 19. Now, what's shocking about this, Mike, is that Master Roshi got less votes than Tien, but when they both directly fought each other in Dragon Ball Super, Master Roshi actually beat him. Now, you could argue that Tien was holding back, but this one should be obvious, shouldn't it?
You can make the argument that perhaps Master Roshi, when he went to his 100% full power bulked up form, might have been more powerful than Tien even back in the 22nd tournament. But according to Master Roshi's own words, he says that if the fight had continued and he didn't eliminate himself, that Tien most likely would have won. Yeah, so when it came to the fight between Master Roshi and Tien, what we end up seeing is that Roshi utterly dominates Tien. And this is because the fact that Master Roshi, when he encountered Jiren, had a talisman placed upon his face that brought out his full unrestricted power to its maximum. Goku makes note of this when he is fighting in his base form against Master Roshi, which comes after the fight with Tien, because the fact that Master Roshi utterly stomps Tien in their fight. And this is a Tien who had trained for many years leading up to this. Every single time we saw Tien throughout the course of the manga and the Dragon Ball Z anime, the guy is training. And he shows up with an even more powerful technique than before. For instance, where he was able to, with his Shinki Koho, the Neo Tri-Beam, was able to keep Semi-Perfect Cell down, even though he was far more powerful than Piccolo, Goku, and everyone else at the time. He was able to hold him down where nobody else could even make a dent. And not just that, but he also was able to blast away Boo's attack, which as Super Boo tanks, Gohan stood no chance against him, but Tien showed up and was able to deflect it. So the fact that Master Roshi not only dominates Tien physically, but then uses techniques like the Bankoku Bikari Sho or the Lightning Surprise Shock attack on him and defeats him and is right about to kill Tien with an attack that Goku has to step in, shows that that despite the fact that Roshi is no longer in his physical prime, he's still way above Tien in terms of his power, and Goku's fists are actually tingling when they're fighting, and he's making note of how impressive Roshi is, which is something he wouldn't do for somebody who is weak at that point.
Now, you know what's the interesting thing about all of this, Mike? And this is something that goes deep into Dragon Ball lore, where a lot of Dragon Ball fans theorize that the reason why Master Roshi never flies is because of the fact that Bukujutsu, the sky dance, is basically a crane hermit school technique, and because they were arch rivals, Roshi would never use the art of flying because that's something his enemy uses. We also have to find something interesting about this, Mike. If Jiren is bringing out Master Roshi's unrestricted power, that does mean, Mike, that with his unrestricted abilities, Master Roshi is capable of flying, because in the scene where Roshi was fighting against Tien, he was capable of flight, Mike. What do you think of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that theory makes sense because we even see Videl, the second she learns about Ki, is shown how to fly and she can easily do it. So I think it's clear that if Roshi really wanted to and really tried to, he could easily learn how to fly because all he has to do is put his Ki underneath himself and lift himself up. He could fire blasts that could blow up the moon. He could definitely fly, but I think because of his rivalry with the Crane Hermit, who is, at least on Earth, the person who invented the flying technique that a lot of other aliens can do, for example, Roshi chooses not to do so, and he's gotten by far enough without it. I mean, after all, the Tournament of Power, they restricted flight except for people who had wings, for example, so as a result, I think it only makes sense that Roshi, well, he also was seen as a perfect candidate for that tournament because of that. And this leads into Krillin, the one who actually won the poll in terms of being the strongest human. And in the Buu Saga, we do have Yamcha saying when Krillin is fighting against Pintar that Krillin is the strongest among Earthlings, at least. And so a lot of people have always said that Krillin is just universally the strongest, that he was stronger than Tien, even though, again, Tien trained, including with King Kai, whereas Krillin never did that, and a lot of other things that would suggest that Tien should have been stronger than Krillin. And in the Tournament of Power, we do see just how strong Krillin got, where not only does he in the lead up to the tournament have a key clash with Super Saiyan Blue Goku and actually temporarily pushes back Goku's technique, which I actually talked about in depth in my video about why Krillin is way stronger than you believe, but not just that, but also, we see that Krillin still gets outperformed by Roshi in the Tournament of Power because Krillin gets easily eliminated by Frost when he's caught off guard. However, Master Roshi goes on to fight against Frost at one point, hitting him and pushing him back. And not just that, but Master Roshi also defeats way stronger fighters in the tournament using the Mafuba, which he proceeds to use over and over and over again. At one point, he was going to use on Frost, who, as we had seen in the lead up to the tournament, is far stronger than before and actually made Hit, who was stronger than Super Saiyan Blue Goku from previous arcs, try to dodge his attacks. And this is a Hit who had just killed Goku with one shot in their little fight leading up to this. And this is also a Goku who had gotten way stronger during the Goku Black arc, so he's far more powerful than when he fought Frieza, for example. But not just that, Roshi in the manga version goes vastly beyond this to where Krillin was far more easily eliminated in the manga version than he was in the anime. But with Master Roshi, he does way better than everyone else on the team in terms of humans, where he squares up to Jiren, he dodges Jiren's attack, he's actually taking brushing blows from Jiren where it's slightly hitting him, and he keeps on going and going and going. So Master Roshi, when it comes to all the humans in the tournament, and most of the other participants in that tournament out of the 80 fighters, does a extremely successful job, whereas you think that any of these characters just powering up would either just blow Master Roshi up or send him flying out of the ring.
But the interesting thing about this though, Mike, is all of these comparisons are a little bit more debatable when you're looking at anime Master Roshi versus Krillin and Tien, but the moment you step into the side of the manga, this is where it gets completely busted, because Jiren alone, combined with the fact that Master Roshi in a one-on-one directly beat Casserole, and then later on, like, Master Roshi blindfolded himself and was fighting, you know, against Moro's attractive female alien goons, and Master Roshi basically became Daredevil against them, which was an extremely funny part of the manga. All of those feats that Master Roshi had when Krillin was struggling, there really is no comparison. Now, what I do think that a lot of Dragon Ball fans used to say before the existence of Dragon Ball Super is that the strongest human ever was Oob, because Oob was basically the reincarnation of Majin Buu, and Goku had so much interest in training Oob, and then obviously when you combine that with what GT expanded on from what we get in the Dragon Ball anime and manga with the whole Oob stuff, it would clearly be that Oob is the strongest human. But then when you start factoring in how Super injected all of these different things about Master Roshi, and the fact that at this current point of time in Dragon Ball Super, even going up to where we are in the superhero arc, Oob is just a little kid, and the most that he ever did was to donate energy to help defeat Moro through the assistance of the Grand Supreme Kai. At this particular point in time, Oob is not a fighter. Even if you said that Oob was equally as powerful as Kid Buu might, what Master Roshi has done in the anime and what Master Roshi has done in the manga far supersedes that.
Yeah, so in terms of that, the fact of the matter is that back when the Buu saga ended, Oob's potential seemed significant. After all, he was the reincarnation of Kid Buu. And yet, when it comes to Dragon Ball Super, Master Roshi makes Kid Buu basically look like an ant by comparison, God Key or not, with Toyotaro's retcon then and there. So the fact of the matter is, he's so much stronger than Oob at this point that it really doesn't make any difference. And the only way that Oob would ever be able to surpass Master Roshi, aside from a huge retcon, would have to be doing insane amounts of training, way past whatever he did in Dragon Ball GT. Now, back in the day before Dragon Ball Super, you can maybe even make an argument that Videl was stronger than Master Roshi and some of the characters from Dragon Ball, because the fact that she was trained in order to use Ki by Gohan. We see her fighting against Spopovich and doing well against the character who was empowered with the Majin Mark and Dark Magic by Babidi to try and take energy from fighters that would resurrect Buu. You would have to assume that Spopovich would be powerful. Otherwise, why would Babidi send him to extract enough energy to revive a character who is far more powerful than a Super Saiyan 2? But at the same time, it is difficult to make any kind of argument to that fact because Videl's feats on screen are not very big, other than the fact that she fights an ambiguously powerful character like Spopovich. Meanwhile, Master Roshi in the 21st tournament, where there's actually a point where he's arguably the weakest he's been on screen in the franchise, was able to blow up the moon. So overall, even back then, I think you can argue that Master Roshi was stronger, and he's only gotten insanely more powerful with Dragon Ball Super.
And something fascinating about Master Roshi, Mike, is by technicality, he's technically the strongest man on Earth all over again, reclaiming his old title.
Yeah, when you factor in that the other fighters are comprised of aliens such as the Saiyans, androids such as 17 and 18, weird mystical creatures like Majin Buu, and the other human fighters may all be weaker than Roshi, then that would suggest that Master Roshi is in fact the strongest man on Earth, which is funny considering the fact that hundreds of years ago, after the death of his master Mutaito, he became the strongest fighter on Earth. And so, ironically, hundreds of years later, he's become the strongest human on Earth again by default. But with all that being said, guys, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to stick around, because there's a lot more to come in the future.